you mean as far as Thomas goes, I was making a documentary film about the British sort of love affair with steam. And this was back in 1979, would you believe? And I came in researching trains and so on. I came across these little books. At that time there were just these 26 little books with simple text and watercolor illustrations. And I just fell in love with them. And I thought, why has nobody ever thought about bringing these stories to life on the screen? So Wilbert Awdry, who created Thomas, or the Railway series of books, came to take part in this film I was making, and I said to him, you know, I would love to bring these stories to life.
Well, I think I always felt like a kid playing with a train set, because I've still got the one I had when I was little. But you know, it's quite hard when you have created something, and when you then live with it, to kind of step out totally outside of it and see it as anybody else sees it. So in a way, it still comes as a shock if I'm like on the other side of the world in Japan or something, and I'm at an airport, and there's a little kid and he's all dressed like Thomas the Tank Engine, he's playing with Thomas the Tank Engine, and it's, wow, here I am, and there he is, and it's like there's this huge family that's connected, because everywhere in the world, because they see Thomas as part of their lives, part of the furniture of life, as I like to call it. But I think probably at the heart of it is the fact that there's this magic little guy, Mr. Conductor, who comes and goes in gold dust, and who travels to the island of Sodor. And then there are other characters in the story who find themselves going to this world, to the island of Sodor, to the land of talking trains. So that's part of the storyline, and it's part of what, in bringing the story to life, makes for some of the complexities that we're dealing with, where you've got all this different technology being utilized to the process of storytelling. Lady is very much a part of the mystery of the story. She's a lost engine, or a legendary engine, and she's very important to finding the solution to the problem that crops up for Mr. Conductor when he completely runs out of gold dust. And then, of course, there are many other characters in the story itself. First and foremost is Lily, who's the 12-year-old girl who is going off to stay with her grandpa, Burnett Stone. Lily's played by Mara Wilson, and Burnett Stone is played by Peter Fonda. And she's reluctant about going in the first place, but she ends up going on this extraordinary journey, which is both geographically an extraordinary journey, and emotionally it turns out to be something of a journey for her and her grandpa. This is towards the end of the story. Diesel 10, who, as Thomas tells us at the beginning of the story, is the 10 being 10 out of 10 for devious deeds and brutal strength, and who has been really beastly to all the engines through the story, and indeed to Mr. Conductor, gets his comeuppance in a major way.
I'm first and foremost, I'm a storyteller, and my responsibility is to bring the best stories that I can to audiences who will hopefully love the stories that are offered and truly relate to the characters. And then if they do that, then they will want to have those stories and those characters in their life off the screen. This film will make good memories for them, that will make it a shared experience for a family, and that will make a good memory, and that for those who already know Thomas and his friends, they'll get all the best that is familiar to them, and they'll get more that's new to them, and they'll enjoy it.
I always wanted to do a children's film, and especially since I have a child in the last 4 years. And a lot of times people, you think you want to do a children's film for the sake of doing one, but it might not be a good movie. And I read this, and it was a really good movie. And I thought, this is, an easy one. And I had done the TV show, a season of the voiceovers for the TV show with Britt, and taped those voices. And I really liked Britt. I thought that when you do a movie and you work with people that you respect and you think that they're onto something, and you like them personally, it makes it easy. I'm Mr. C. I'm the conductor, and like any basic children's story, or like many of them, someone goes on a journey to reclaim something that they've lost or forgotten from their childhood, which is Fonda. And Peter goes on this journey, and we are the 10-man cowardly lion, and so forth. I've had that journey for him to discover what he wants to discover. And alternately, like in that story and like in other stories, those characters themselves have their own journey. They're there not only to aid and abet the cause of the primary figure, but they themselves have some drama they're involved in. So Mr. C has this magical quality that he loses. Anything that employs the kind of, I don't know what the Lewis Carroll or anything you want to call it, the kind of fantastical elements of it. It's something as simple as talking to Junior on the Bellflower phone, the scene where I have the phone call with him and he's at the beach that we shot, or the scenes in the Grove where they come around to the place that the story wants them to come to. Certainly among my favorite scenes of the movie are anything with Michael Rogers, I have to say. What's the word I'm thinking of? The unsinkable Michael Rogers. But Michael doesn't listen to a thing I say.
He just ignores you?
Nothing. We really do have a brother relationship. I tell him to do something, and he nods, and he acknowledges, he looks me in the eye, then he goes out and does exactly the opposite of what I tell him. And in that sense, he's just like Billy and Stephen and Danny. He is my fourth brother in that regard.
Missing Baldwin.
He is, yeah. Michael Baldwin. Yeah, he goes and does exactly the opposite of what I ask him to do, which I'm used to, that's fine. I love trains. I love that it was animation, but with figures, you know what I mean, not drawn. And I loved the sweetness of it, I must say. I think Thomas is so good looking. Thomas is a great leading man in films. He's a very underappreciated leading man in films. I think he's better looking than George Clooney, quite frankly. But seriously, the thing that I liked most about the character was that I thought that he was fun and funny and just a little bit kind of playful. You know, sometimes you have characters that are positive characters for children that you want them to see, and they're not a lot of fun. And I think the most important thing about the Thomas series is that the characters within the program seem to be having fun with each other.
It made me appreciate the script because it's an entirely different story than any of the Thomas the Tank Engine stories. This is this is a departure, but not from the reality of Thomas and what he's, or the magic and whatever the imagination is there. It's just a deeper look. A man who is shutting himself out of the world. And in this particular story, shutting himself out of the world of magic, yet not really completely. But getting so close that by the time my granddaughter arrives, and the story actually begins with her then coming to me, she is the impetus that saves me from giving up on magic, giving up on life. Which brings us right back to Thomas the Magic Railroad, because things have gotten messed up real badly. We don't have a lot of time. We have to get it right, and we depend upon Grandpa Stone to come to his senses and get on the right track. I was curious as why we were going all the way to the Isle of Man to shoot this. And my curiosity literally ended today doing this scene when I saw one of the steam trains come by. I have a grandson, Thomas, who's got Thomas the Train. And Mr. Conductor sits up in the cab, you push Mr. Conductor down, and the train scoots forward. You push him down, scoots forward. And I thought it was great. I'd like to do this kind of film. I've always wanted to do a children's film that satisfies the child in me.
Lily is a little girl that lives in the big city, you know, with her parents. She likes it, you know, she likes it there because it's really just, I don't know, the noise is kind of comforting to her, you know. And she goes to visit her grandpa, and he's very, you know, he's a very quiet man, keeps to himself, and everything's very quiet, and she doesn't like that. On the Isle of Man, it was just beautiful, like Grandpa's house. I love that because, you know, the blue ocean and the green rolling hills, and it's just, you know, just gorgeous, you know, just great. It does challenge your imagination, and it's kind of funny though, you know, when you're supposed to be pretending you're like on this, like I'd have to be pretending that I was on the magical island and stuff. I'd be looking around and see like lights and dust, and yeah, a bunch of men standing there with lights, and it's kind of funny. I used to watch Shining Time Station when I was really little, and I can like vaguely remember it. And one time my cousin, he was obsessed with Thomas. You know, he sent me a coloring book of it when I was like 6.
I think that there's a part of him that is definitely the child that I wished I could have been, and that's the magic about being in movies, is that you can often go back and relive parts of your life that you didn't really have a chance to go through experientially as you were growing up. Because when you're a little kid, you're like a sponge. And when you see a train, who, to a child, is a person, is a real living thing, as far as Thomas is concerned, who is in a dilemma, and he tries everything he possibly can to get himself out of that dilemma, and comes out smiling on the other end. Children remember that. Children are extremely astute and smart. As somebody was saying to me, a child is not a child, they're just a small person, you know. And when you give to the society in ways of stories and moral tales, and instill people with optimism, I think that's a wonderful, wonderful thing, because we don't have enough of it. As Britt said, you know, children are just little people. It doesn't mean to say that they don't have a mind of their own where they can't think. And you know, the minute you start treating them like children, it doesn't, they don't care as much. Do you know what I mean?
When I first read this script, and I told Britt this, the thing that was my first consideration was how do we marry these two worlds so that it seems like one movie and not cutting from two different movies back and forth. And I now have a sense of how that's going to work. Part of it has to do with the color palette, the playfulness in terms of color that Britt has included, and also part of it has to do with just Britt's own special she finds little vignettes to do in the real world that give it a playful quality that I think will help it sort of tie into the toy world we go into when we go into Thomas and the models. When you're shooting the models, you have to keep like the green screen process in mind, and when you're doing the green screen, you have to keep in mind what's already been done as plates in the model set. So as a result, you don't have all the freedom you might have, and I think one of the challenges that you experience, and I think one of the challenges for the director, is to, in some way, sort of fool yourself into thinking that you really do have all the freedom in the world within the confines of a fairly narrowly defined set of parameters to shoot once you've got a plate shot and you have to shoot green screen.
If you are shooting Thomas and also involving CGI work, most of the television series, in fact all of the television series, has never relied on any CGI at all. But when you're coming to the big movie screen, CGI is there to assist. It's not the whole, it's part of the whole. And it's really to be done so the audience doesn't notice that it's been done at all. It's very useful CGI. It's, as I said, it embellishes, it increases, it can achieve certain shots which would be totally impossible in certain circumstances to achieve ourselves, because some of the shots that have to be done are in real landscape situations where you would need the real full-size Thomas to actually perform the act. It's CGI's art that can actually achieve that kind of shot. But it's not to be overused. It's not that kind of movie. On the subject matter of making the models, as we've had a lot of experience from the series, of course, but they have to be replicated in that Old English style. The experts that we bring in, and I consider them experts, are architectural model builders who would actually replicate those kind of things like they do with bridges. The guys that work in metal, the guys that work in plastics, the mold makers, there's a colossal amount of them. There's about a 40 model making team, 40 people at the start of anything, and they're all actually doing all separate things to achieve what you see on there. So some are making trees, some are making landscapes, some are making engines.